Hey guys, if you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Appreciate you. Now let's get to it. Alright, what is up, Average Gamer? Signing on back with another unscripted video. The series where I just talk my ass off about random topics, unscripted, just throwing my thoughts out there. So, this video, we're talking about something that's been on the timeline as of late on Twitter. I'm not calling it X, Jesus Christ. So, Tekken 8 has been going strong. Roughly what? 2 million sales, I think, was reported. Very nice. Tekken 8, great game. Pick it up if you haven't. I think it's wonderful. So, we got a roadmap in their Tekken talk that they have every now and then. And they gave us kind of this future of the game, this outlook on what to expect. And one thing in particular got a lot of people talking. And that is the new edition of the Tekken shop. Now, essentially all this is a microtransaction platform. And when I say that, you probably pretty much know everything there is about it. You pay money, get currency. With that currency, you can buy stuff. Now, they told us that the Tekken shop will host a bevy of things, but the thing that's probably most important for most Tekken fans is legacy outfits. And they kind of gave us this example of, okay, essentially $1 is equivalent to 100 currency, and these costumes are going to be like $4 a pop, roughly. So essentially 400 coins. Again, they kind of had some ambiguity with those numbers. They said it was a rough translation. So for simplicity's sake, we'll just say $4 a pop. Now, obviously, when people hear microtransactions, they immediately throw out the scummy term, oh god, this is bad business, this is anti-consumer and all that. And yeah, for the most part, I think that has a lot of validity. But I'm going to be honest, I'm actually somewhat torn on my opinion on this Tekken shop. So to start, microtransactions and DLC, and yes, I'm throwing those two in together because functionally they're pretty equivalent. The only real difference is the number of transactions happening. Microtransactions and DLC, they are not inherently, and I want to stress that word, inherently bad. Just because microtransactions and DLC exist in a game does not mean it's bad, does not mean it's anti-consumer necessarily, and it doesn't mean that the business in question is scummy. Now, this fundamentally is because not all microtransactions are created equal. I've seen great games become even greater with DLC, with microtransactions. I think people who say that all microtransactions in any instance and regardless of any sort of context is bad and scummy or what have you, with respect of course, are kind of being surface level in thinking here. DLC microtransactions, difference, once again, one transaction with DLC, you just go to your store, whether it be Steam, Xbox, PlayStation Store, and you buy the thing, it gets put into your game. Microtransactions, there's two transactions. You use your money to buy currency, and then that currency is used to buy whatever items or cosmetics, whatever there are in the game. Two transactions there. And I think that two transaction system with the microtransaction is what is actually being criticized. But if you're going to criticize microtransactions specifically on this grounds, then it's obvious that you can't just say all microtransactions are bad, because the way it's designed is the thing that's the actual thing that we're criticizing here. So let's get into that a little more. First off, I think most of the perceptions on the issue of microtransactions and whatnot is centered around this idea that, oh my god, I couldn't talk, my god, excuse me, that DLC and microtransactions have invaded the industry of sorts. Everyone's using them now, and at least in terms of batting average, a lot of it is pretty scummy. In terms of fighting game fans, we all know how Street Fighter 6 has been doing in the matter. So has MK. I don't really know that much about the game, but I've heard microtransactions are not great in that one either. Obviously, sports games like NBA 2K and Madden have been heavily criticized for their microtransactions. And then you have games like Fortnite and other free-to-play games that have them and these are probably viewed as the most acceptable. I don't think many people have a problem with Fortnite's system. Now, people talk a lot about the old days, and in context of the Tekken shop, these legacy outfits being free once before, and now we have to pay for them. Oh, that really sucks. Well, if we're going to talk about the old days, let's be honest with ourselves. Those old games did not have literally everything. And a lot of times they used an entire new game to put new stuff in, which would also technically be considered bad in this scenario. If we were to be consistent, of course. Because those things that were added could have been added in the original game, but of course budget and what have you exist, which I think a lot of people ignore. And then they add those things back in a future title. I think that would be also considered bad. And if the legacy outfits are the real stickler, I'm going to get to something I think people should think about. So, let me actually give credibility to both sides of the argument here, just to kind of give you guys a reason why I'm torn about this. So, obviously, as I said before, quick overview. Shop, it exists, legacy outfits, cosmetics, all kinds, avatar skins, all that. Essentially $4 a pop. Now, some things will be free and some won't be. Now, they mentioned that the shop is going to be updated every month or so. Once or twice a month, I believe, was the exact terminology they used. And I think there's already some criticism to be made here, and the criticism I'm making is what they revealed in the talk. So, if the shop is updating once or twice a month, which is not the most frequent, but still, I would say on the level of other microtransaction shops, right? So that means that it potentially may put a timetable, well, not even might, it does put a timetable on the costumes, cosmetics people want. Therefore making people feel pressured to go ahead and buy since they might not know when it comes back. And if that's true, then I think that's kind of bad, but granted, again, a month is a somewhat fair time. I think, again, there's a lot of ambiguity in how they framed and phrased certain things. So once or twice a month, are we going to know that, or are they just going to do it automatically? Again, a lot of pressure on putting pressure on the consumer there, and I think a lack of transparency also doesn't really give a lot of confidence to this new Tekken shop. Secondly, in terms of price, while I think $4 is moderately acceptable, I think it's in that moderately acceptable range. For classic costumes that have already existed, granted, they upscaled them, they did some reworks, and that does take money, to be fair, but they are still classic costumes. I think for those in particular, they should be less. Again, $4, moderately acceptable range, but I think for the classic costumes in particular, they should be less. If you're talking like new costumes and whatnot, I think $4, yeah, okay. Again, moderately acceptable. I think the question then becomes, how are you actually buying the currency? That in that two transaction process, that first transaction that happens, you using your own real life dollars and buying this in-game currency. How is that going to be designed? Because I think that's going to be the mechanism by which people will deem this as scummy. What exactly are the pricing options and bundles involved in all of this? I think a lot of people really got a bad case of anti-microtransaction when we saw Street Fighter and how their system was designed, and it was clear that the consumer was going to be wasting money because you were going to get put into this odd situation where you were buying more than what you actually needed. Now, these questions, criticizing Michael and Harada specifically here, these questions should have easily been answered in the Tekken talk. You guys literally pointed out how people have this negative view of microtransactions. Well, they have that for good reason, and you guys definitely should have took time to tackle the main concerns people would have had with this, and this absolutely would have been one. So I think you absolutely messed up by not saying, okay, out front right now, here are our pricing options, here's what they mean for you as the consumer. I think that was a big miss. Now, they mentioned as well no cross-commerce, also a miss. I think, granted, it may not affect that many people because I think most people just play on one platform anyway, but for the people who do play on two, I think you should reward your hardcore fan base and just let them have that on both of their platforms, excuse me. So I think all of these things would be scummy, despite me hating that term. But I think a lot of that is just due to a lack of transparency. Some of the criticisms that I made in that short list there were potentially not true, but the way they framed the whole discussion kind of left ambiguity into how this shop actually is going to work. Now, the thing that a lot of people are genuinely excited about when it comes to this, though, is they said that the money that was gained from the shop was going to be reinvested in the company. Well, not the company, the game, excuse me. And also with this, there's just a lack of transparency. Reinvested in terms of what? What are we getting for supporting this shop? What are we getting in addition to buying the costumes that we want, you know? So now some are arguing that supporting a game at launch takes money, and getting all the things necessary to develop the game, it takes money. Then afterwards, supporting a game after launch takes money, all that mess. Okay, and so the common like counter argument is like, okay, well, I pay $70, but hey, remember, hey, oh my god, you gotta break even. I mean, well, we know that Tekken has 2 million sales. Even if we just say everyone just bought the base edition, which is not true, I would be shocked if they have not broken even yet. So I don't know how far that argument gets you. Of course, we recognize that updates, new characters, new stages, all that does take money, and I don't want to discount that. But again, transparency here. If they needed that money and they wanted to use that money to reinvest into Tekken 8, what exactly is that for? I think Michael and Harada, again, needed to answer that question to build confidence in this system, because as they said in the Tekken talk, people have a negative perception of microtransactions, and I don't think they did enough to assuage those criticisms and initial bad impressions. Now, I think the question in terms of reinvestment and all that resides in how long this game plans to get support and how much is put into said support. Because yeah, this is a business, and they definitely want to pocket money and support the game at the same time. And I don't think that is necessarily scummy. That's just how business works. That's literally the history of commerce, okay? So where on that arbitrary line is Bandai and Harada in terms of this? And I think that will be revealed with time. I don't think that can just be something that a game that's only been out a month can really answer right now. I think 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, we'll actually see just how much this reinvestment strategy actually materialized. So they imply in the talk that as well, and I think this may be an example of that reinvestment, they said in the talk that in addition to DLC characters that we know coming, they're actually going to also be putting character stories. And they said, and they implied at least, that this would be free to us as players. And I think that's great. And I think a lot of people view that as good. And I think it's a good sign for people who are in favor of this whole microtransaction system that, hey, I mean, this I have to pay for, but I'm getting this for free. I mean, I think that's a fair trade-off. And if said money I'm spending is going to all this other free stuff down the line, then I think I might be able to stomach that $4 price, which I think also has some merit. So I think the problem I have just in general is that there's so much unknown, and this is why I'm torn, because I think there's a making of a good system here, because again, I don't think all microtransactions in DLC are bad, but because of that negative perception, I think you had to get ahead of the curve and really build confidence in this new system. And so again, if we're going to get free things down the line like these character stories, I think you should have been like pushing that as the focus and telling us that directly, just so again that confidence builds. Now let me say this, because I'm sure the scummy defending shilling businesses is probably going to come up. So allow me to just say this. Tekken 8 is a very good game. This should, like, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. Even if this whole Tekken shop thing got released day one, it's still a great game. I'm not really one who downgrades a game based on a feature like that, unless the feature is bad, of course, which again, hard to tell. It's not out yet. So this game has a ton of in-game content. I would argue that it is one of the more content-rich Tekken games, and obviously fighting games in general, if not the most content-rich Tekken game. And that, of course, required a lot of money. And with all things business, money is not endless. So yes, things had to get cut. You can't just add everything. As much as consumers and players like to act like that sometimes, you can't literally have everything. Even in the glory days of old, those games, Tekken 6, Tekken 5, they did not have everything. So some things have to get cut. New things that you would have liked to add to the series will probably take priority over old things. And sometimes, depending on the game, that the new things may take a back seat. Obviously, we see there's not that many new characters, for instance. Now, it would be one thing if the game was bare bones, but we got all of this content, and this is like the one thing that requires money. Even the legacy outfits, like that's the one thing. I'm not saying it's not unfortunate. I would have liked them to be in the game automatically, but like, come on. This is clearly different than the field, in my opinion, in terms of microtransactions. And so I think it should be deemed, at the very least, moderately acceptable. I think we should have a little bit more, what's the word, charitability. Yes, charitability towards them. Now, of course, if it comes out and it sucks, then yeah, criticize them to all hell. I'll be right there with you. But I think, just for now, let's wait before we call them scummy. I know it's an easy argument to, well, excuse me, no, it's an easy insult to make, because it's not actually an argument. Now, before I go, I would be remiss not to mention this, because it is a common argument against people who are against microtransactions, and that is, you don't have to buy it. Now, I know, a common argument and an annoying one at times, but I do need to stress this because it is important. At the end of the day, these are cosmetic items, and there's nothing pay to win about this. It is unfortunate that we have to pay for things that were once a part of the series, but again, I go back to what I said before. This game is filled with content, filled to the brim. If this is the one thing that they're asking money for, I think that's fine for them to do so, and I think it's fine for the consumer to say, F no, I'm not buying that. And I think that's perfectly fine, but that's still your choice. If you're telling me, oh, I already paid 70 bucks, I deserve that for my purchase, you do understand that argument that you're making to me right now. Do you think Tekken 8 is not worth $70? If you do, if you don't think that, okay, fair enough. But if you do think Tekken 8 is worth $70, if you are happy with your purchase, why are you using the whole 70 bucks as an argument? Because if you value your purchase, if you actually liked what you got out of your $70, you wouldn't be bringing it up in now a negative context to say, oh, I got 70 bucks, I deserve all this that wasn't currently in the game. You were happy with your purchase. If anything, this should be an add-on to an already great game in your eyes. Again, assuming that you value that purchase enough and you're happy with it. Now, and this is why I feel like the whole scummy argument is only valid if the game was severely lacking in content. Or, of course, they were forcing it down your throats in order for the game to function, which neither of which are true in this case. And if we are going to use this money to reinvest, again, they weren't exactly clear. That could have been just a basic business phrase to instill fake confidence that will be squandered in the future. But if they are serious about reinvesting those funds, I mean, that would also benefit you as the player, no? I mean, like, it's not like, so let me get straight, you don't have to buy it. If you do, congrats, you get your costume, and that money will go to the benefit of the game down the line. So what exactly is the negative? You had to buy it in the first place? Well, you don't have to. Is it unfortunate that classic costumes get, jailed in the microtransaction system? I mean, sure, but again, if Tekken 8 is already a great game, if you already deemed Tekken 8 great, despite the costumes not being there, well, now they're giving you an option to get the costumes you want. Again, what's the issue? That you have to pay for it? I know. Again, unfortunate, but I don't think that's enough to make a coherent argument. In totality, I can't say that this is a good or bad thing. We'll have to see when it comes out. I don't think they deserve to be called scummy automatically with such little information. And I don't think people also need to be championing it as if this is like some of the greatest things ever done. I mean, please, it's still microtransactions at the end of the day. But please spare me, okay? If we're gonna have these combos, I think we need to be fair These people having these combos are longtime Tekken fans. So clearly you like the game. You trust the people that make it. So I think some charitability is in order. But hey, those are just my thoughts. My rant. My unscripted rant that's probably very incoherent. I'll try to formulate my arguments better in the future. But I want to hear your thoughts as always. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. If you really enjoyed, hey, check out some of my other videos. Leave down in the comments, of course. I am always valuing discussion on this channel. Let me know your thoughts. But here's the thing. If you disagree with me or anything I said, I need to make sure you actually heard my arguments. So here's the test. You gotta put XD at the end of your comment. That's how I know. That's how I know you watched the video. That's how I know. All the way to the end. XD at the end of your comment. Thank you guys for watching. Average Gamer signing off. See you guys next time.